Hey, before we get into the episode, I want to tell you about something I'm trying called Podcast Club. Here's why. If you've been on social media, even at all lately, you might have noticed that everything is starting to sound and look the same. It's not about having real conversations anymore. It's about performing for the algorithm, and half of it sounds AI generated. So I wanted to try something different. Podcast Club is like book club, but for this show. Once a week, we'll get together live on Zoom and actually talk. What do you want to go deeper on? Where are you finding that you feel resistance? And how can you take what you've been listening to and actually apply it to your life? It's for women who listen to this podcast and want to be in real conversations with other women like them. If that's you, head to consciousedge.com/club. Pick the days that work for you. I'll save your spot, and I can't wait to see you there. If you are someone who comes up with lots of great ideas, but then fails to execute on them because either maybe the lift is a little bit too big for you to implement with everything that you have going on right now, you don't have the capacity for it, or you're in a situation where you don't want to spend the money to implement it the way that it needs to be implemented because you don't have a guarantee of what the outcome's going to be. So you're uncomfortable testing that idea out and it feels like there's too much at risk to execute on that idea. Today's episode is going to be for you. So let's dive in. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alecia St. Germain, founder of the Conscious Edge. And for many years, I was someone who was trying to do all the things and do it all myself. And I felt like it was all on me, being a mother, trying to balance building a business and actually a couple businesses. And I had to make some really hard decisions. And so what I've learned is that really focusing in on purpose and finding the right people and learning to lead people well, handle my own emotions, and build a really strong financial plan around the business that I'm creating changes everything. And so that's what I help women entrepreneurs do now inside of the Conscious Edge. So if you are brand new, I want to say welcome. I'm so glad that you are here. We put these episodes out every single Tuesday. So if you enjoy today's episode and something lands with you, there are plenty of episodes for you to go back and binge on. There are over 100 episodes now inside of the podcast. But also we put these out every Tuesday. So make sure that you hit follow or subscribe from wherever you're listening so that you get notified every time a new episode comes out. So I had this thought today, and it's really funny. I've had this conversation with some of my colleagues over the years, and we will come up with at a mastermind some kind of idea. I'm just coming back from InvestorCon. Everybody is like full of new ideas and actions they want to take. And then what happens is the farther you get away from that idea, the less excitement you have for it, the less likely you are to execute. And one of my favorite books that I read a while ago, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, this isn't just her idea, but she talks in it about I think it's called multifocal discovery, where an idea floats around looking for someone to birth it out into the world. And if you don't grab that idea and execute on it, it's going to float on to someone else. So if you've ever had that experience where you had a really great idea, you didn't execute on it, and then you find someone else has done it 6 months later, a year later, or 5 years later, and you're like, oh my gosh, I had that idea. Because it was meant for you in that moment. But if you don't act on it, it's going to move on to someone else. And so they talk about multifocal discovery, where scientists and people will have discoveries in different parts of the world without knowledge of each other's research at very close to the same time. And so it's this idea that when something is meant to come to fruition, it's going to find a way. It's going to find a human being to help it come out into the world. And so you've got to act fast. And so I definitely am someone who has a high standard for what I want to put out into the world. Very much a perfectionist in the past, where I didn't I always see ways that I want to improve on something, and sometimes would take things to 90% and then not actually get them across the finish line, or not even start something because I didn't have the capacity for what I knew it was going to need. And that really slows down growth. And the people who are out there doing business with the people that you want to be doing business with aren't doing it necessarily better than you. They're not necessarily care more than you or more ethical. You might have a judgment that they're not quite as ethical as you, or you could do it better. But they're doing it messy, and they're doing it just letting the journey unfold as it is. And so because they're the ones there, that's who people are choosing to do business with, because that's their only choice, because you haven't made yourself visible enough to be the person that they get to choose. So one of the things I've learned over the years, I find that being someone who has a high standard, who has a good eye for what needs to happen, who is relentless about continuing to improve things, is that I do strive for excellence. But where I've crossed the line to letting go of perfectionism is I don't need things to be perfect in order to protect myself from what you might think of me. And so what made me think of this is the execution of Podcast Club. So if you've been listening to the last couple episodes and you've been reading some of the emails that are coming out, I've been promoting Podcast Club, because I wanted a way to be able to connect with people that wasn't social media, because social media feels like a performance to me. It feels like everybody's trying to say exactly the right thing. And honestly, when I go to try to post on social media, I start to overthink. And I'm like, okay, I got to say the right hook at the right time. And I've got to be quick, and I got to make it under 15 seconds. And I got to make it powerful and shareable. And it's exhausting. I slip too much into perfectionism sometimes when I'm doing social media. When I'm in flow, I can just make a video and shoot it out there, but that's not an arena that I'm super comfortable with yet. And so I also just felt like it was a lot of ads. It was a lot of people in their effort to try to do it perfectly are using a lot of AI scripting. I am hearing certain words come out that I know are AI scripted because everybody starts to sound the same. It was really funny the other night. My husband was talking about something, and twice in 24 hours, he said the word character flaw. Now, I have never heard my husband put those two words together ever in my entire life. And he said it twice in 24 hours about two different situations. And here's one of the things I know from AI and using it and some of the scripts and things that are created is it often says, that's not a character flaw. Now you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it everywhere. That's not a character flaw. And so he's not on AI. He's not using AI in his business. It's not something he regularly does. But what I know is that sometimes he consumes podcasts and sometimes he watches video on social media. And I'm betting that it's like kind of or other people are, and they're using that combination of words. And so it's sneaking into our language. This AI generated content is sneaking into language into people who aren't even really utilizing it. So I think that's like crazy sauce. But my point is, I was getting really bored with social media. And one of the things that I love to do is I love to connect with people. I'm a connector. If you need something and I know someone and I can put you together, I'm going to do that. I love to be around people. I get a lot of energy from being in conversations with people. And that doesn't happen on social media. And also, it doesn't happen really in a authentic way in some cases. And sometimes it happens in a really nasty way. Like, I don't do bully. I don't appreciate people being mean to each other. And I think that we can all talk things through and work things out. And I believe in feeling all the emotions. Even if you feel angry, it's okay to hold anger and not act in inappropriate ways if you feel angry. It's okay to feel sad, and you can hold sadness, and I can sit in sadness with you, and I'm totally comfortable with that. And I think that we need more human connection. I think we need more people being willing to sit in uncomfortable emotions and have uncomfortable conversations and support each other and be in connection with each other. And so Podcast Club was this idea that came to me in the shower of like, I should do like book club, but podcast club. And we can come together and we can talk about what we've been talking about on the podcast, look at how it applies to you, look at where you might have felt some resistance or didn't agree, and just have some conversations around it. I wanted the podcast to become more than just something you consume, but something that actually is meaningful in your life every week, something that you listen to regularly and then take action on, and it improves your life. And it doesn't just entertain you, but it makes you into the best version. It helps you become the best version of you. And I think being in connection with other people, like attracts like, right? So if you enjoy this podcast, I want to connect you with other people who enjoy this podcast, because I think that you, like minds will come together, and it's going to make this journey of life feel a lot less lonely. This journey of building a business a lot less lonely. And so I wanted to try it out. So in the process of having this great idea, I have lifing at me in a really intense way. I don't know how to put it any other way, but we've had cars that have had to go into the shop because of damage from being run into by a deer. I've had like water leaks in my pop-up camper, and my dad and I have been having to fix it. I'm getting ready to go to InvestorCon. I already went, but at the time I'm getting ready to go to InvestorCon. And so like I'm trying to get everything together. And then amongst all of like taking care of clients, taking care of kids, taking care of things that are outside the norm, an idea floats in. Let's do podcast club. And I could have said, I don't have the capacity for that, but I knew it was a really good idea. And I knew that it was something that felt really easy and really aligned with my values and what I wanted to do to connect with people. And so rather than go, oh my gosh, I have to build a whole marketing campaign for it, I have to figure out a way for people to sign up, I always have some things in my back pocket that are really easy to execute. I don't need to hire someone to test something out, because I like to test things. Anytime I have new ideas in my business, I like to test them in the most clunky way I possibly can, that is not a heavy lift, that is not going to create a lot of manpower and create a need for lots of dollars to be spent without knowing what the outcome's going to be. And so some of that comes from me not knowing enough about tech and how to put things together. So I have some really clunky ways that I put things together. Very often you'll get an email from me and it'll say, oh, I had an idea. Here's the Zoom link. Let's like hop on Zoom and let's do this training. Because I'm going to make it as easy as possible on myself to do the thing that I know is going to help you. All my clients know, like, My emails are going to have typos. I try really, really hard, but grammar and typos, I will always go back and read an email and it is going to have a typo in it. And it's who I am. And I care so much about the people that I help, your success, and getting you pertinent information that is going to help you move forward in the world. And if someone has a judgment of me, like, oh my gosh, her grammar's not perfect, or oh my gosh, that link didn't go out right, or something like that happens, and you cannot have enough flexibility to give someone grace for being human, then that is your work. That's their work, right? I'm not saying you're like that, but that is their work to do. And probably if someone engaged with me and was like, hey, like, I notice I'm judging you because of your grammar and because you didn't send out a link right, or because you had a misspelling on something, or I don't know, you could make up any number of things that I have screwed up over the course of having a business. And I notice I'm judging you for that. And so chances are this person who is judging that is also judging themselves times 10. And it's exactly what is keeping them stuck. And so that's actually their work to do. Super happy to help you out with that. But I might drive you crazy in the process. And if you can stick with me through the uncomfortable emotions, I can help you get to the other side of that perfectionism that someone is carrying. I know I keep switching tenses from you to they because I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you specifically. I'm just saying in general, if this is you, I could help you with that. But regardless, I digress. So it's really important to me to be able to test out ideas that I have in business without risking too much money, too much time, and see how people respond. And so what made me think about this is I set up Podcast Club using some of my testing tools, using some of the strategies that I use to test things imperfectly. And I forgot to link a Zoom link. And so today I had to go through and individually email all the people who are coming to Podcast Club. We meet most Thursdays, and send them a Zoom link and be like, hey, I forgot to attach the automation for the Zoom link. Here you go. A little bit of extra lift. It was missed in the process of everything that was going on, and it's okay. Now, what will happen is after I've tested out Podcast Club, I see how it works for my life. I see how people receive it and if they like it and they want to keep doing it, then it makes sense to invest in some more structure around the thing that I'm doing. And so I'm bringing this up to you because I have a friend who is a brilliant woman who's very skilled in tech. And so when a new idea pops in, sometimes it's really hard to act on it because she sees everything that could be done to make it like follow good marketing practices, follow all of the automations that can be set up technology-wise, like build out the full funnel, make it like big and beautiful. And so when she's really busy, she might feel like, oh, I don't have the capacity to do that, and then delay. And I know that other people do that too. Whatever it is that you're expert in, you are more likely to overthink testing something out or doing something because you can do it, because you know the proper way that it should be set up in order for it to be successful, but you don't have the guarantee that it's going to work. And so because you know everything that's involved in doing something, you're going to think you have to do it to the nth degree. You think you have to do it the proper way in order for it to work. And what I would really like you to do is push yourself to think of the fastest, easiest way to execute that new idea you just had at a conference. The fastest, easiest way to execute that idea that came to you in the shower without needing to put a lot of time, energy, resources, manpower, without knowing what the end result is going to be. So it's a test. Once you have proof of concept, once you see, okay, yeah, this is going to work. Now, maybe it's going to mean a little bit more on your part. Like, I was spending time literally messaging people that connected with me on Instagram after the conference was over and saying like, hey, I'm doing this thing called Podcast Club. I would love for you to come. That's a little bit more work on me, but I got this idea and I really want people to come, and a personal invite is gold. And if I am too busy, if I think to myself like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I need to do it on a mass scale. I need to do it in an automated way because I'm only thinking about how do I get my time back? How do I scale? Which is a lot of what is taught. Then it never gets executed at all because you're not supposed to do it that way. It's not supposed to take too much of your time. I found little pockets of time to do this, and it was so easy and it was so lovely. Like it felt so real and authentic to connect in that way. And people are coming to Podcast Club, which I am so thrilled about. And we're going to do this for the next 90. I've committed to doing this for the next 90 days. So you got to give yourself time to work out the kinks, right? I got to give myself time to catch the glitches. I got to give myself time to give it to work. I don't care what business you're in, expecting marketing. I think marketing is the number one place where people, they give up too soon. You're not consistent enough, long enough. You don't do something long enough for it to catch fire and for other people to start to tell other people about it, or for someone to have enough touch points with you. And you're like, oh, it didn't work. I wanted instant results, so I'm not going to do it because I didn't get the results that I want. But you're not willing to do it long enough to like let it really catch fire. And part of that's because you're making it such a heavy lift to do the thing that it isn't sustainable. So we're going to refine this over the next 90 days. We're going to see how people respond. We're going to test it out. I have a really good feeling about it because just coming off of that conference and seeing the way women connected with each other and how hungry people are to be in connection with each other, but also understanding that it is a lift to get to a conference. There's hotel, there's flight, there's time away from your business. And even like sometimes getting in your car and driving to a networking event or driving to something, people don't want to do it. And I'm trying to shift my own mind around that. I've gotten a little bit complacent and I stay in my house a little too much. For somebody who's an extrovert, I think I forgot I'm an extrovert. And so I just know in my heart that this is what people want and need, but I'm going to make it really easy on myself to execute it. So my question for you is, where in your life are you making it harder than it needs to be to execute on an idea that feels like flow, on an idea that feels like it's 100% in alignment with what you do, and you have a really good feeling about it in your gut and you want to test it out, but you're making it hard? And how can you make it easy? That's the key, is how can you make it easy? And it's so funny because when you are someone who doesn't have the expertise, who has to like, well, I'm just going to figure it out, it's easier. Sometimes too much knowledge and knowing how to do something really well is your kryptonite. So I think that's really interesting. It's the same thing. Like I think about when people rehab houses. So often they forget they're not going to live in the house. It's going to be a rental. And so they're fixing up the house like they're going to live in it, spending way too much money on it. It ends up being over budget, and then it doesn't really become the most profitable deal it could because they aren't considering like what is actually needed for the level for the exit strategy that they're using in real estate. So they over repair it. That is like the cardinal sin of real estate rehab, right? Is don't over improve a property for the exit strategy that you're using. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it is so hard for some people to like say, okay, we're just going to let this be good enough. It is painful. It causes them physical anxiety to just leave things good enough. And what really helped me is to think about everything that I do in my business as a version 1.0, version 1.2, version 1.3, version 2.0. Like each one of those points is like a refinement. And then when we totally upgrade the system, I think the Conscious Edge at this point is probably on at least on version 5.4. So you have to think of your business as ever evolving and changing with the times and innovative and new information coming forward. And that it's okay to put out a beta version. It's okay to put out a new upgrade imperfectly and then go back and keep making it better. One of the things that was so powerful to me was having a coach. Now it's been almost 9 years, I think. Having a coach at that time that I was just getting started, who also was willing to move forward and do things messy and figure it out along the way and not worry about making it perfect. I gave her so much grace for doing that because it gave me permission to also do that. If I waited for everything to be perfect, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have evolved to the place that I am today. And knowing that I could go back and make things better and that it was also okay to test things out and do things imperfectly made all the difference. Some people couldn't stand that about her. Some people judged that so harshly. And the thing about a perfectionist is their good is usually most people's great because they have such an eye for detail and they have such high standards. And so I've started to realize that a lot of the things that I do produce are really great, even though I know they could be better. And so I just keep making things better. And I keep talking about my process. And I keep talking about my thought, like my thinking around things. I own what I screw up. I own where I make mistakes. I try to put better systems in place when I screw up with my clients. And I hope that they stick around for years. So it must not be that detrimental to many of them because most of my clients will renew for many years to work with me because they know they get better results being in community, working with a coach than they do off on their own. And we go so deep and we all just keep evolving. If I see a place where my clients are stuck, I'm looking in the mirror and going, okay, how am I perpetuating this stuckness? And where do I need to go with myself? How do I need to show up differently for myself and for them so that it inspires them to get unstuck too? And I share all of that candidly because it was so helpful to me when someone did that for me. And it is so much easier for me to take action and test out those ideas and move forward imperfectly when I'm telling you, I know it's not perfect. I know that I'm opening myself up for risk of judgment. I know that some people won't like it. And also, that's okay. That's okay. And I do my best. And that is anybody in this world is doing, is I do believe people are doing their best. And if somebody is doing something unethical or something shady or something that, they mistreat someone, and if they're not owning it, that's also part of their journey. It's so hard and so difficult, I know, to be wronged by someone, have someone make a mistake and then not own their mistake, but that is also their journey. So I really try to hold compassion for people who their ego won't let them admit that they've made a mistake or that things are not going smoothly or they've wronged me in some way. I also know that their ego has said to them like, oh, this is so unsafe. You have to double down on being right because being wrong is the worst thing possible. And so they're on their own journey to figure out that like, you're still lovable even when you're wrong. Even when you make a mistake, you're still lovable. And part of what makes you lovable is your willingness to own that mistake that you make. It's not about getting it right. And so I really try to have grace with people. That doesn't mean I don't get angry. It doesn't mean that my clients might not feel frustrated with me or irritated. And they'll follow up and they'll be like, hey, there's a mistake here. Or, hey, it's been a little longer than you said it would be to get something back to me. And I appreciate them pinging me because when we stay in clear communication, when you create that openness for clear communication, then we can clear the air. We can do better together. And I think that's so powerful in business is creating that space where feedback is welcome and we can all do better together and grow together. And when someone's, again, so what I was saying was like, it doesn't mean I don't feel anger. It doesn't mean that I don't sit there and say to myself, I feel so angry right now that someone is not owning their mistake, that someone has wronged me or done something that is unkind or whatever it is. And I don't feel anger about it. I 100% feel anger. And sometimes I cry and sometimes I fantasize about like how I want to melt their face off with all the mean things that I could say. And then I also step back and I say to myself like, okay, hang on. That's not helpful. That's not actually going to create a better result. And so I look at my intention. So I don't think that I really intended for this podcast to go to that place of how to handle anger or how to handle when someone else makes a mistake in your presence. But I do think it makes sense because so much of why people don't want to test things out, don't want to do things imperfectly, want to make sure they do it the best that they can, or thinking that it has to be done a certain way, is to prevent judgment, to prevent themselves from looking silly or dumb or stupid or being judged. And so I think when you understand that you can feel certain ways about other people who also make mistakes, and that you can feel angry, but also still treat them with compassion and kindness and respect and understand that they are also on their journey and it feels unsafe to actually own their mistake, you can have compassion for that, even if you're angry. And I think when you really bake that in and you really understand that, you don't have to be afraid of testing some things out, of acting quickly on those good ideas that you have. I'm not saying be reckless. I'm actually saying it's probably more reckless to think that you have to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy on something that is not a guarantee versus just testing things out in like a minimum viable product kind of way and then see how people respond. See if that is if your hunch of what people want and need is really what people want and need. See how they respond. Just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean everybody else thinks it's a good idea. So you got to give yourself that space to test. So I hope that this inspired you today to take that idea, take that little thing that you wanted to test, and instead of tucking it away and saying, I don't have capacity, you ask yourself, you know what? How can I honor this idea? How can I move this forward and make it easy on myself, make it easy on my team, make it easy on everyone, not have to have it be perfect or a big production to make it happen, and let it be good enough, and then see how things go from there. And if you want some help figuring out how to put that idea into the world and see if you're making it too complicated, if you're feeling resistance to it and you're making it too complicated, then come to Podcast Club. And you can go to consciousedge.com/club. RSVP, let me know the date that makes sense for you. Come to all of them, come to one of them. And we can see, like, where are you making this complicated and get you into action. So I would love to see you there. We're making this easy. It's fun. It's meant to connect. You will find that it is no judgment. You show up however you are, and we're there to support you. And I'd love to see you. So with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love. Next week, Jen Boss will be with us. So make sure you tune in for our monthly money talk with Zen Jen. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.